with the host of Stand for Truth Radio, Susan Knowles.
And welcome to the program, everyone. I'm your host, Susan Knowles. Please check out my website at susanknowles.com and the articles that I write as a contributor to The Blaze. And don't forget to follow Stand for Truth Radio and a segment I do called Knowles on the News. Just go to Spreaker.com or the Spreaker phone app and type in Stand for Truth Radio and follow the shows there. Get all the latest updates as they happen. Stand for Truth Radio is now also on iTunes. Look for us there. Hear and download our podcast for free. And you can also find me on my YouTube channel where I post a lot of videos about current subjects and issues of the day. And just go to the YouTube channel, look up Susan Knowles. And then you can also follow me on Twitter at Susan Knowles. Now, my guest today is Pastor Carl Gallups. He's the author of Be Thou Prepared. And we talked about his book the last time that he was on this show. And I hope you have since gotten that book and you're a little bit more prepared now. This time we're going to talk about a different subject. This show, I think I'm gearing it more for those who are undecided about who they want to vote for in the November elections, whether you're a never Trump person or a Christian who feels that they should vote third party or stay at home because they just can't vote for the current candidates that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a little introduction about Carl, and then we'll bring him on. Pastor Carl Gallups is a best-selling author, senior pastor, talk radio host nationally and internationally, TV and radio guest commentator, former decorated Florida law enforcement officer, founder of PNN, and member of the Board of Regents at the University of Mobile in Mobile, Alabama. Carl's books have been reviewed in the Washington Times, the World Tribune, WND.com, and several university publications. Carl has written for the Jewish Voice Today magazine, WND.com, and several local and regional newspapers. He's preached to tens of thousands of people from coast to coast, including Hawaii and Alaska, and also in Canada, Israel, and Peru. It has been said of Carl that he is quickly emerging as one of the most passionate, courageous, and stimulating Christian radio talk show hosts in the country. He is absolutely fearless. So let's welcome back to the show Pastor Carl Gallups. How are you?
Susan, thank you so much for having me. It's always a joy to be with you.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad. With everything that you're doing and all the places that you're speaking, I'm glad that you had time for us and that you could come back and talk to us for an hour.
It's my honor, yeah. No, I thank you for making this time. This is an important topic to me, so I'm looking forward to it.
Great. And I think as everybody knows, this is, I don't know, I've seen more heated discussions than I have ever seen in any type of election. I've seen a lot of controversy and a lot of nastiness on all sides. And I think even this election is even more controversial than when Obama was running twice. And, just to let everybody know, I'm undecided at this point on how I should vote in November. I'm in the wait and see mode. I think it's no surprise to anybody who listens to my audience. I was pro Ted Cruz because of the Constitution and the fact that he was holding the Constitution and how he felt about that. But right now I'm in a wait and see mode, and I'm in a wait and see mode, in a God wait and see mode, how God would have me vote. So I may be one of those people that you're talking to today about how I should decide on who to vote for.
Yes, I may be.
Well, now let's start out with this. You wrote an article for WND.com called "Trump Candidacy Divides Christian Leaders," and your piece was a response to Russell Moore. First of all, tell us all who are not familiar with Russell Moore, who is he?
Yes, I didn't write that piece, but I was interviewed, and I had a lot to say, and I was quoted extensively in it, but I was not the writer of the article. I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay.
But yes, Dr. Russell Moore is the president of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, the Southern Baptist denomination. Many of your listeners will know what I'm getting ready to say, but many will not. So let me inform those that may not know this fact. The Southern Baptist denomination is touted as the largest evangelical denomination in the world by sheer membership size and worldwide missions outreach. But what a lot of people don't know, I am Southern Baptist. Let me go ahead and give that disclaimer. First of all, I'm a Christian and a Bible believing, Jesus loving, kingdom of God advancing Christian, regardless of any denominational hashtag that's placed upon me. But I have been in the Southern Baptist denomination for many decades now. So I'm a Southern Baptist pastor. Graduated from a Southern Baptist seminary. So anyway, the bottom line is Southern Baptist churches are autonomous. That is, the church that I pastor, I have pastored one church for 30 years, one church, and it is a Southern Baptist church. Now, that's quite unusual. Most Southern Baptist pastors are only in a church 4 or 5 years. At the most. I've been the pastor there, the senior pastor for 30 years. But there's no hierarchical ecclesiastical body that tells the church that I pastor how we must believe, how we must maneuver, how we must act, how we must govern ourselves. Each church is autonomous in that way. However, we do voluntarily cooperate together through a thing called the cooperative program, wherein we send monies and offerings to the missions program of the Southern Baptist denomination. And, of course, we have to stand by the general doctrinal stance of Southern Baptist. I mean, we can't be off on doctrinal tangents and call ourselves Southern Baptist. So people just need to know that. Now, so who is Russell Moore? How can he be the president of a commission of the denomination then? Well, because what we do is we have a general assembly every year, and we send representatives from churches all over the nation to this assembly, and we elect people to represent us on the various commissions and boards that we have established over the years of our history, to just direct us and to guide us and to lead us as a denomination in our cooperative denominational work. So while our leaders are important and while they do have quite a bit of authority within the parameters of their job descriptions, they can issue their opinions, but they cannot mandate directives to the churches or to the pastors. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So he is the president of the Ethics Commission. Now that commission is supposed to represent to the world what the general ethical and moral and biblical stances are that we take as Southern Baptist as applies to social life, religious life, political life, logistical life. I mean, just geopolitical affairs, etc. What are the ethical dilemmas? What are the ethical problems? What are the ethical responses as a Christian? And of course, that commission produces literature and books and study programs and Bible studies and sermon material and magazines and periodicals for preachers and teachers, etc. So it's a very important position, quite a large staff, and it's all financed through the cooperative program. Now, having said all that, Dr. Russell Moore, I think he's 44, 45 years old. He's come up through the Southern Baptist ranks, graduated from Southern Baptist seminaries, actually was the vice president at a very young age of Southern Baptist Seminary, and I think it's in Kentucky. Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, one of the 6 large seminaries of the Southern Baptist denomination. And then from there he was elected as the president of the Ethics Commission. So recently he has come out, and by the way, I've been in Southern Baptist life for a long time. I'm about 20 years older than Russell Moore, and I know a lot of people who have known him since he was a very young man, some who have even worked alongside of him. So I know quite a bit about him. I've never met him personally, never had a personal discussion with him, but I'm fairly familiar with who he is and his philosophy. from everything that I know of people who know him, he seems to be a very sincere man, a man who searches after the heart of God and the mind of God and the things of God. I don't doubt any of that. I do know he comes from a little more of a liberal mindset, raised in a Democrat family, raised in a Democrat part of the nation, served as the press release agent for a Democrat congressman in Washington, D.C., out of Mississippi for years. So I know he has taken positions in the past on border control and immigration laws. He seems to have a general disdain for the holding back of immigrants and refugees. His belief is more along the lines of, I don't know that he would say he's an open border kind of guy, but he is much more lenient towards just allowing everybody to come here, because he sees that as God opening up the mission field in America for us to reach people for Christ. Well, I share that same kingdom heart. I don't mistreat immigrants and refugees. I look for opportunities to minister to all people of any nationality, faith system or no faith system. So I share that with Russell Moore. But the problem is, back when Pat Buchanan was running for president, back in the 90s, I think, 80s, 90s, Russell Moore was adamantly opposed to Pat Buchanan, because Pat Buchanan was saying, look, we've got to get a grip on our border. This is causing a crisis. It's going to destroy our country. It's going to water us down. It could literally destroy us. Well, along comes Donald Trump saying the same kinds of things, I think perhaps even more measured, in my opinion, than Pat Buchanan said. And Donald Trump is saying, look, in light of the Middle East exploding with Islamic terrorism, in light of the fact that we've already been attacked September the 11th, 2001, 3,000 people died, ramming jets into skyscrapers in New York City. Let's not be insane about this. There is a people group that desires to destroy us. And because of what's happening in the Middle East, ISIS is now bragging that they're using the refugee crisis as a Trojan horse to infiltrate Europe with their ISIS operatives. The FBI now admits publicly in mainstream media that they are tracking ISIS terrorist cells in all 50 states of the United States. We know that ISIS operatives are trying to gain entrance over our southern borders, coming through our porous southern borders. And so Donald Trump is, and then of course Barack Obama has this, what I believe to be this insane policy of importing tens of thousands of Syrian, Muslim, Middle Eastern refugees and dispersing them throughout the United States, conveniently, it has been exposed in some reports, into traditionally conservative areas of the country, dispersing these people amongst our population. And basically, he's suing Sheriff Joe Arpaio and other state officials around the nation who are trying to enforce our federal border laws and immigration laws. And Trump comes along and says, we've got to stop the madness. He said, I don't hate Muslims. I don't hate immigrants. I am all for legal immigration. And I echo what Donald Trump believes along these lines. He says, but we've got to hold back the flood of the Islamic refugees and immigrants until we know who's who. We don't even have a vetting process. We don't know. Our FBI already knows that ISIS terrorist cells are all over our nation, and they're using our porous borders and our insane immigration policies under the last 8 years of this administration. And Trump says, I'll build a wall if necessary. We're going to enforce our laws. We're going to vet our immigrants. We're going to make everybody go through the legal process. Now, that is pure sanity. That is pure common sense. That is pure constitutional law. The Constitution requires the federal government to protect our borders. But instead, the federal government has decided that it's going to get involved in telling men that they can go in the little girl's room. That's more important than obeying what the Constitution does say we're supposed to do, and that's protect our nation, protect our borders. So I think that's one reason why Donald Trump is resonating. Now, Russell Moore came out and attacked Donald Trump and basically called upon Christians and of course Southern Baptists, a huge portion of the evangelical community, called upon him to to not vote for Donald Trump. I don't know that he used those words, but in other words, he resoundingly rejects Donald Trump, his philosophy, calls him morally inept and morally destitute and somebody that we just can't vote for. Now, I took him to task on all of that because, first of all, I think he's misrepresenting Donald Trump's real stance on immigration. By the way, Jimmy Carter, one of the most liberal Democrat presidents we've had before Barack Obama, he did the same thing Trump is doing. He actually deported Muslims from the United States. He actually put a ban, a moratorium on any more Muslim immigrants into the United States during the Iran hostage crisis. He exported thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Iranian students from the United States. Where are the liberals now screaming about that? Why is Donald Trump evil for doing what Jimmy Carter did, and the liberals applauded him? So you see the hypocrisy stinks to high heaven here. And Russell Moore kind of joined in on that, joined in on the Never Trump bandwagon, and based it upon this, we've got to just love everybody in the name of Jesus. We've just got to receive everybody. Well, okay, I get that. My life is dedicated to loving people in the name of Jesus. But in the meantime, a nation without borders is no nation. And a nation that's no nation soon collapses and goes into tyranny and into captivity. And if that happens, then we won't have the ability to take the gospel to anyone, much less refugees who are among us. The refugees can overwhelm us and can take control of our legal system and can shut us down. And if you don't believe it, ask the people in Europe. It's happening to them right now. So this is why I think Trump is resonating. I think this is why Russell Moore is making himself irrelevant and obsolete. I think he has angered millions and millions of Christians who see their nation being snatched from them, our sanity, our sanctity, our safety, our security for our children and grandchildren by these inane statements made from powerful denominational leaders speaking out of a liberal mindset. He's being used, in my opinion, as a useful idiot by the liberal mainstream media. He's written op-ed pieces in the New York Times and the Washington Post slamming Trump. And, of course, these two of the most liberal rags in America, they love Russell Moore now. He's their hero. Well, of course he is, because he is blowing the liberal trumpet. And anyway, that's why I made those statements. I think he's misguided. I think he's ill-informed. I think he's misinforming the rest of America. And instead of he's telling us basically who not to vote for, but conveniently he doesn't tell us who to vote for. So if we stay at home and millions of Christians don't vote, that's why Obama went in office 2 terms. That's why we now have gay marriage. That's why we now have the transgenderism bathroom issue in the public school decree across America, because millions of Christians stayed home and didn't vote, or voted for a third party who had no chance of winning. Because people say, well, I'm always voting for the lesser of two evils. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You always have, and you always will until Jesus returns. And so the thing is, if you don't vote, or if you vote for a third party that will not and cannot win, then you have literally actually voted for the greater of the two evils. So this is what I'm telling people. Look, don't get caught up in this political correct speak, analysis, paralysis by analysis, until you wind up doing the very thing that you think you're standing against.
Yeah, and I know that Russell Moore, in reading, he said a lot of things like Donald Trump is reality TV moral sewage, and he did encourage people to vote third party instead of voting for Trump. And my thing of it is, I do like a lot of what Trump has said that he's going to do. I know some of the things that make me uncomfortable is that one day he's really talking about, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and the next day it's like, well, I'm more open to this, and I'll look at that. It's not a direct flip-flop necessarily, but it's a backing away from a hard stance that he said he was going to do. And I think a lot of people are looking at that and going, how do we know this person is going to do what they say they're going to do. We've heard people tell us over and over that we're going to do one thing, and they end up getting elected, and they do something totally different.
Yeah, I can answer that question. How do we know he's going to do what he says he's going to do? Here's the answer. We don't know. Mm-hmm. But we do know what Hillary's going to do. She's lived it. She's told us. She's been in the White House for 8 years. She's been Secretary of State for 4 years. She is telling us on the campaign trail. Her life tells us everything from the insider rips and books that have been written. They tell us. We know what she will do, and we know what she won't do. She will be Obama on steroids. And if we want more of what we have been having crammed down our throats for the last 8 years, the lawlessness, the godlessness, the complete insanity of partial birth abortion and selling of baby body parts while the president and the federal government backs it up and goes after the guy who exposed it rather than going after the murderers and the butcherers. If we want more gay marriage, more radical targeting and attacks of Christians through the gay marriage agenda and the radical homosexual agenda, if we want more inane, insane directives coming from the government telling boys they can go take showers with girls and nobody can do anything about it, if we want more of that, then don't vote, or vote third party and put Hillary Clinton back in. Now, do you say, well, gosh, you sound like Trump's campaign chairman? Absolutely not. I do not think Donald Trump is the savior of this nation. I don't think that he is the moral example of the perfect person or perfect candidate. But what I see in Donald Trump, I'm like you, what you said a moment ago, Susan. He's saying a lot of right things, although it concerns me when he vacillates. But here's the thing. Donald Trump's basic foundational philosophy is a universe apart from Hillary Clinton's. That is, he does seem to care about the rule of law. He does seem to care about the Constitution. He does seem to care about the strength of our military, the strength of our economy, of bringing America's corporations back to America out of the foreign countries. He does seem to care about nationalism more than a global one world order-ism. He does seem to care about defending our borders and our sanity and our sanctity and our safety. He does seem to care about most of the American traditional ideals, history, and heritage. Now, is he perfect in all of those areas? Absolutely not. But here's the deal. You got to ask yourself, on November the 9th, one of these people is going to be your next commander-in-chief. Your next president is going to be Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. You know, short of something weird happening between now and November, because it's still 6 months away. I mean, Hillary could be indicted. I mean, Trump could have a heart attack. I mean, you know, who knows? But short of something weird, on November the 9th, it's going to be Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. So out of those two, which one do you think, as a Christian, do we have a better opportunity to influence? I'm going to give you a biblical example. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego taken into captivity into Babylon. Susan, we're living in Babylon now. We're living in Sodom and Gomorrah. That's where we are. Okay. Taken into captivity. Nebuchadnezzar the king. Why didn't Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, quote, vote their conscience and tell the king, I will not go to your schools, I will not learn your culture, I will not learn your language, I will not participate in what you have planned for our lives. We will go ahead and kill us now. We're voting our conscience. We are not voting for you. We are not going to align ourselves with you. See, we hold them up as heroes and the epitome of character. Yet what did they do? They aligned themselves with the king, the culture, the language, and the customs. Why? So that they could be influencers. And then we see the rest of their life they spent attempting to influence the king and the culture. And they didn't compromise when it came to the hills they needed to die on. They offered themselves to the flames. They offered themselves to the lion's den. God intervened in those cases, but throughout we read where Nebuchadnezzar has changes of hearts, and he issues decrees acknowledging and honoring the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the God of heaven, the God of Daniel. So I'm just saying, we're living in a fallen world is nasty business. It is not clean. It's not simple. We can't sit on a hill with our hands folded with a little white robe on and a halo over our heads saying, I'm just going to be separate from it all. To Christians who say, I can't vote for Donald Trump, his moral rectitude doesn't measure up to mine. Okay, here's my question. Who do you work for? You work for the school system? You work for a corporation? You work for the hospital? You work for, a law firm? You work for a government office? Who do you work for? Are your bosses all the people that pay your salary? Why don't you quit? Why don't you vote your conscience? Why don't you just quote in God? I mean, don't be self-righteous about who's going to be president on November the 9th, but then live the rest of your life making compromises every day. You see, Susan, people need to get their heads wrapped around reality. I'm not calling on anybody to compromise. I'm saying life is nasty. We live in Babylon, and we have got to look for every opportunity we can to get some breathing room and to get some influence. The Christian message is not about seizing control of the governments of the world. Jesus is going to do that. The Christian message is we're to be the salt and the light. And if the salt loses its saltiness, it is worthless, Jesus said, and it will be trampled under the feet of men. So if you sit out this election and you allow, and when I say you, I'm not talking about you, Susan, I'm talking to your audience. If
right.
we allow Hillary Clinton to go in and continue 4 to 8 more years of the madness that Obama has brought upon us, then you have allowed your salt to be trampled under the feet of men. Now, again, you say, well, you think Trump's just going to deliver us? I don't know. God can use him. He sure can. Just like he used Pharaoh, just like he used Nebuchadnezzar. He can surely do it. He can do it. Will he? It could be that Trump goes in and becomes more insane than Obama. You say, well, what are you going to do then, Carl? I'm going to say, oh, well, I mean, it's in the hands of God. I did the best I could with what I had. I had 2 real choices on November the 8th. And I know what Hillary's going to do. And I know what Trump is saying he will do. I want to put the person in there that I think will be the easiest to influence for the things of God. And right now, the only choice that is Donald Trump. For those who disagree with me, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and let me argue the other side, because I want to tell you what my audience is saying and some of the thoughts that I've had too. You know, I know I always hear people give the argument, well, we're all sinners and there's no man better than the other. I get that. You know, I also get that, you know, a lot of times God will just turn us over to ourselves when we're doing things that God would not want us to do. Now, it's hard sometimes because in the beginning, like I was going to say or kind of talked about before, I was for Donald Trump. I loved the things that he was saying. I liked what he was saying about, you know, building the wall, not having people come over that aren't vetted. I mean, common sense stuff. I liked his stance on veterans, although right now, you know, some veterans, they're signing petitions saying, what happened to part of the money that you said that you were going to give to us? We've only gotten half of it. Where's the rest of it? Okay. You know, whatever the case may be. But there are some things that really bother a lot of people. Number one, in the beginning, and I was a person that spoke out about that a lot, saying, you know, you've got to start acting more presidential. You can't sit there and talk down and insult people. It's middle school, okay? Some of the things that, you know, that he said during when Ted Cruz was still in, when he was going along with, maybe not saying necessarily, but really going along with the fact that, oh, Ted Cruz has cheated on Heidi. And then Heidi, you know, she's ugly. Carly Fiorina, she's ugly. Megyn Kelly, she's ugly. You know, everybody's ugly. Everybody's this. Everybody's that. And I get that sometimes. It's to me, it's a sign of immaturity that you have to say that to people because you don't know what to say otherwise. What I would have liked for him to say, perhaps, is, you know, I'm not getting into some of those things. I don't know whether they're true or false. I don't necessarily agree with them. And you know, sort of back off. I mean, you don't get into the fray as a president or a potential president of the United States into things that are just moronic.
Well, yeah.
You know, and also, sure.
No, I was just going to say,
ahead.
Listen, I agree 100% with you, 100%. The question now, though, is, what do we do about that? What choice? Of course we would prefer. Listen, I would have preferred that Ted Cruz didn't align himself at the hip with the moronic, insane delusional Glenn Beck, but he allowed Glenn Beck to be his main trumpet person, a person whose religious background is schizophrenic. His presentation of himself is moronic and childish. Yet Glenn Beck, Ted Cruz, not only allowed it, but invited it and encouraged the relationship. So what was wrong with Ted Cruz's judgment and moral character? Listen, I've interviewed Ted Cruz's father on my radio program. I know how they think. I know some of the background. I'm not impressed at all. I was not impressed with him. Ted Cruz is not constitutionally eligible to be the president. In what universe can a man who's born in Canada with a Canadian birth certificate, to a father who's a Cuban, to a mother who we now know won't even turn over her records of when she was a Canadian citizen, because now we know that more than likely she was a Canadian citizen when Ted was born. She never registered him at the American embassy. And in what universe is that a natural-born citizen? And yet Ted Cruz claimed to be a constitutional lawyer, but has been totally dishonest about his eligibility during this whole campaign. So I'm just using that not to bash Ted Cruz, but to make your point. Every one of the candidates are flawed. Every one of them say and do things we wish they wouldn't say and do. I was asked to lead the opening prayer for the Donald Trump rally in Florida. There were 15,000 people. I led and opened that rally for him. His campaign leaders asked me if I would do that. I said, do I have to endorse him? They said, no. I said, can I pray in the name of Jesus? They said, yes. I said, can I call our nation to repentance in my prayer? They said, yes. I said, then I'm your guy. And people ask me, well, why would you open the rally for Trump if you're claiming you're not his campaign manager? I would open Hillary Clinton's rally if she said I could pray in the name of Jesus and call our nation to repent, and I didn't have to endorse her. So so I've been involved in this at the gut level, and I'm disappointed in much of what I see and hear from Donald Trump. Very disappointed in much in what I saw and heard from Ted Cruz. But I'm being pragmatic about it, Susan. We're coming down to the wire. Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump is going to be sitting across a table from Vladimir Putin in the months to come, or from ISIS leaders. Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump is going to be in charge of our border security and our immigration policies in just a few months. Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump is going to be commanding our U.S. military forces in just a few months. That's what we're left with. Now, I hear what Hillary Clinton. I know what Hillary Clinton does and what she thinks and how she's operated. I hear what Donald Trump is saying. Do I wish that Donald Trump were more presidential and less childish in some ways? Absolutely. Do I wish he were more godly? Do I wish that he was more like me and believed everything I did doctrinally? Yes. But we've never had a president in our lifetime who was a true man of God. We have not. Bill Clinton sang in the choir at Emmanuel Baptist Church, a Southern Baptist church in Little Rock, Arkansas. Jimmy Carter taught Sunday school in a Southern Baptist church in Plains, Georgia. Obama went on TV with Rick Warren and swore to us that he was a Christian and in favor of one man, one woman only marriage. Ronald Reagan was married before, was a Democrat before, admitted in the New York Times that he and his wife used astrology charts to set their daily routines. I mean, please name for me who this perfect candidate is that we could have voted for. We're always voting for the lesser of the two evils, always until Jesus comes. But to not vote at all or to vote third party is to always vote for the greater of the two evils, Susan. That's what I'm trying to get people to see.
Sure. Yeah, and I just want to go back on kind of what you said a minute ago and regarding Glenn Beck and Ted Cruz. I write for the Blaze as a contributor. There are things that I disagree with Glenn Beck. I don't see Glenn Beck obviously in the same way that you do. I think that I haven't seen him or know of any facts where he committed adultery. He has admitted that he is an alcoholic and a recovering alcoholic and always will be one. I haven't seen him, with pictures that some people would say are pornography, with or condoning it, and I'm talking about the pictures of Donald Trump's wife. Some people, not all people, but some people would see that as pornography. Things of going out and saying that somehow Ted Cruz's father may be connected with Oswald and the killing of Kennedy. I mean, Ted Cruz, while you're saying, too, with Ted Cruz, that
But by the way, I haven't said any of those things that you just said. I just want to be clear on that. I have not said any of those things.
Well, when you were talking about Ted Cruz and Glenn Beck and his past
Yes.
and things like that.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is, with Ted Cruz, there are also some courts that said Ted Cruz was eligible to be president constitutionally.
Yeah, but
and
look
whether
at the
we
courts
agree or
that
not.
said that. Look at the courts that said that. Appointed Democrat judges by liberal appointees, and the very same credentials Ted Cruz holds, Prince Hashim of Saudi Arabia holds. His mother is an American citizen who never renounced her American citizenship, Queen Noor. His father, now deceased, a Saudi Arabian prince, king. Hashim, born in Saudi Arabia to an American mother to a foreign father. Do we really want Prince Hashim being the commander-in-chief of America's military forces? All he would have to do, according to the Constitution, is come live in the United States for 14 years, and he could run for president if Ted Cruz is eligible. They have the very same credentials. America had better get a grip on reality, Susan. We're just about to lose our nation because of political correctness and people twisting and compromising eligibility rules to put somebody in office that they happen to like better than somebody else.
Well, and then I had another listener that asked, how can you reconcile voting for a man who has been reported that his connections with Jeffrey Epstein is a known pedophile? And while I'm saying that, in court transcripts, it's been reported that, Trump has said he's a terrific guy, he's a lot of fun to be with, has even said that he beautiful women as much as I do. He's known him for 15 years. So obviously, now I hear Trump sort of backtracking. Well, I don't know this guy. Whatever. But it's kind of clear that he does, and he's known him for a long time. And aren't we sort of, kind of judged by the company that we keep sometimes? And
I don't know. Are we? If we're going to do that, let's talk about Ted Cruz hiring Neil Bush as his economic advisor. Neil Bush was very best friends, he and his family, with Mr. Hinckley, who shot Reagan. Ted Cruz's father, as you pointed it out, there's been a lot of indication that, he's in photographs. And these pictures, by the way, came from the Warren Commission. They didn't come, they were reported by tabloid papers, but the photographs came from the Warren Commission report. He is seen in pictures with the man that's accused of assassinating JFK. So you've got all these associations with Ted Cruz. Why don't those count?
Well, I think they did count, and I think that's why Ted Cruz, for the most part, isn't in.
That's my point. I mean, everybody's associated with somebody somehow, either directly or indirectly through life. That's just life. And if you're more than 40, 50 years old, and Trump and Cruz are, then you're going to have these associations. There are people I'm 60 years old. I was a cop for 10 years. Been in the ministry for 30 years. There are people in my background who I was associated with that I wished I hadn't been associated with, but things were different and times were different then. If I'm going to be held accountable for everybody that's crossed my path and everybody that I have said nice things to over the years, then I'm in a mess. So I don't know. I'm not saying to wink at these things, Susan. You're right. All of these things are factors of consideration. But I don't think we need to focus in on any one of those things and say, oh, well, here's the deal. He's associated with so-and-so. So, therefore, I will not vote, or I will vote for a third party. And I'm saying, so who's your perfect third-party candidate then? Please tell me that.
Yeah, I don't know that there is one, but there could be a write-in candidate for some people, whoever that person is. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
who would be your perfect write-in?
Who knows? There's no perfect person. You could write in Jesus Christ. You could do that.
That's my point.
But the thing of it is, in bringing it back to Trump too. He goes out during the whole process with Ted Cruz, looking at Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is the devil, okay? And Heidi Cruz, because she's with Goldman Sachs, she's the devil, that type of thing. And I'm being facetious when I say that, but almost not being facetious. And then he goes out the next day after Cruz drops out and gets a finance manager who worked at Goldman Sachs and was also working with George Soros. I mean, I have problems with that, just that alone.
Me too. Yeah, me too. I have yeah. No, listen, I've got all the same problems you have. Listen, I really do. I mean, I've kind of taken devil's advocate position on some of the things you've raised, and you've done the same with me, and that makes for good discussion, good talk radio, and good education for audiences listening. I love you, Susan, and I know you respect me. I'm not being antagonistic. I'm just wanting people to think through this, because everything you've said is very important. I think everything I've said is important. When you boil it down, though, and here's what I'm saying, on November 9th, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton is going to be the president. Now, we have a choice to make. Can we influence a possible King Nebuchadnezzar, or can we influence a possible Queen Jezebel? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you say, well, gosh, that's just terrible. Yes, it's called life. We're living in Babylon. We're living in Sodom and Gomorrah. It's called life. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Check out now, offer yourself to the flames, or either engage the culture, get involved, and try to influence. If you don't vote, or if you vote third party, you will put Hillary Clinton in and continue the madness. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, and that's fair. Let me ask you a question as far as, again, another view from the Christian side of it. And not that yours isn't, but I'm just saying another view of the Christian side.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think mine is too.
Yeah, that's why I clarified there.
Yeah, thank you.
What about those people that say, what about God? What does God want me to do? I'll be honest with you, I am one of those people. If God told me to go out and not vote or this and that, whatever he says, that's what I'm going to do, regardless of Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, or anybody else.
Yeah, I can tell you the answer to that biblically. Here's the deal. Of course, if an angel of the Lord appears to me tonight and says, don't vote, or just check out, just walk away from it, because I'm getting ready to bring down the fire of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's over. It's done. If that happens, then that's exactly what I will do, and I will trumpet it with every microphone God gives me. In the meantime, I have to rely upon biblical principles, because that hasn't happened yet. I don't know the day or the times. Listen, I've just written a new book that's coming out this fall. I'm not at liberty to talk about it yet, but it's about the prophetic times in which we're living. I know the prophetic times in which we're living. I know we're living in the days of Noah. I know we're living in the days of Lot. I know we're living in the days of Babylon. I get it. But in the meantime, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, what were the biblical principles? Well, they didn't compromise. They continued to pray even when they were told not to pray. They continued to serve and to love and to worship their God even when they were told not to. I get it. I will never compromise that. But in the meantime, they immersed themselves in the culture. Now, they didn't blend themselves with it, but they became the salt, they became the light, they became the influencers, they became the shapers. They were kind, they were courteous. They did not present themselves as wanting to overthrow the king, but they constantly appealed to his better nature, to wisdom, to godliness, and God used them over and over and over, even though they got thrown to the lion's den, even though they got put in the flames, but yet in the midst of that, God delivered them and used them as a witness. Those are our choices. The Bible tells me, be the salt, be the light. If it gets dark, turn up the light. If you don't use the salt, then it will be trampled. You will be trampled. What are salt and light, Susan? They are change agents. They are things that you do. People say, well, I'm just going to go by faith. Well, I'm going to refer you to the book of James. Show me your faith without works. I will show you my faith by my works, because faith without works is dead. The Bible tells me to never grow weary of doing good. The Bible tells me to live at peace with each other as much as it is possible with me. The Bible tells me to be the salt and the light. In other words, the Bible tells me to engage the culture, advance the kingdom of Jesus Christ. Now let me get back to the bottom line. On November the 9th, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton is going to be the president. What are we going to do to ensure one or the other of those is there?
But your argument, and I'm playing the other side again, is that you could vote for Hillary Clinton and still have that same philosophy. I mean, how do you know? You know, because literally, you could go out and vote for her and then be the salt and light, just like you said. What difference would it? I'll be Hillary Clinton. What difference does it make?
You can.
What difference does it make?
No,
yeah,
you can. But here's the difference it makes. The difference it makes is I'm using the evidence before my eyes. See, I'm a very pragmatic, scientific. I was a criminal investigator for years. This is how I look at life. I don't deal with the what ifs when I don't have to. I know that I've said, well, what if we could change Donald Trump? Well, okay, but the reason I say that is because I'm listening to what he's saying, and I'm looking at areas of his life where he has built his life upon a strong economy, a strong nation, a strong defense, the things that he values and treasures, a strong rule of law, a strong constitutional mindset, a strong understanding of history and heritage. So I'm basing my what-ifs based upon what I see. With Hillary Clinton, yeah, what if? Of course God could change her. Of course God could use her. She could get saved and become the queen of Christianity in America. But based upon everything that I know and that I have before me, not likely. Not likely. There's nothing in her life to show that. And so that's why I don't get into the what-if game with Hillary Clinton, because I'm basing my decisions, unless God intervenes and shows me something else, based upon the evidence that's before me, based upon the pragmatic considerations that are in front of my face. You know, the word ignorance, that's become just such a nasty word, it's this pejorative, but it means, as you know, the root of it is ignorance. It's the state of ignoring what is right before your eyes. And so, therefore, you become ignorant, So right. I'm just saying I'm not going to go at this in ignorance. I'm not going to ignore what's before my eyes. Hillary Clinton has a track record of governing in the governor's office of Arkansas, in the White House, and in the Secretary of State's office. We know where she stands. We know she's a socialist. She's a liberal. She's a communist. She's godless. She's anti-Christian. She's pro-abortion, pro-homosexual. She's Obama on steroids. We know. Donald Trump, on the other hand, says a lot of things that are the antithesis of that. Some of the things he says are not much different. I get that. But I'm saying, on November 9th, one of them's going to be the president. Which one do I think might we be able to influence the most? Which one of them do I think out of the box will probably give some breathing room to Christians and to this nation and to our children and our grandchildren? Probably Donald Trump. So that's why I'm voting for him. I do not think he's the savior of this world, but I'm voting for some breathing room. I'm voting for some possibilities based upon the pragmatic evidence before my face. If it turns out that he's a deceiver and a liar, and he's as bad or worse than Hillary, then oh well. I did what I could do with what I had before my eyes, and I was the salt, I was the light, and I stayed engaged. But I'm not going to be one of those people who sits on the side and says, my conscience won't let me vote, yet my conscience will allow me to work for godless people and to bring home paychecks from godless people and to shop in godless people's grocery stores and to eat in godless people's restaurants. But my conscience is just way too sensitive to vote for a man, and I'm just not going to play that game. It's hypocrisy.
And I think a lot of people probably, they don't see it as clearly as you do. And I think they have a good point as well.
I'm sure
they look at Donald. Yeah, they look at him and they see a man who says, I've never asked for forgiveness. He's not repentant. He's committed adultery. He's, talks about it. I think he's kind of proud of it, actually. And somebody who says those things, or 2 Corinthians, he doesn't read the Bible and perhaps as much as he would want people to believe he does. All of those things, they make people wonder, is this a person that God would have us follow as far as our nation is concerned? Or are we going to vote for somebody that says all of these things, we ignore it, either one, Hillary or Donald Trump, either one, we ignore what they're saying to us, and then God says, okay, well, you could have voted third party, you could have done that, but you didn't, you chose the lesser of two evils.
Name the person whom God would say, this is who you need. Name that person.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, when it gets closer to November, but when it gets closer to November, and I've been in prayer from all this time, then I'm going to know who God wants me to vote for. Now, it could be that God says vote for, and here's what I will tell you. I'm not voting for Hillary or Bernie or anybody else on the Democrat side, so anybody can take a deep breath on that one. I'm not going to be doing that. It's either going to be Donald Trump or I'm going to write in a third party. I'm being very honest.
If you write in a third party, then you have voted for the Democrat Party. In pragmatic, statistical reality, if you vote for a third party, you have voted for the people you just assured your audience you would not vote for.
And that's the argument, and I know that there are a ton of people who don't agree with that. I'm
the statistical
not
truth.
there yet.
Yeah, I deal in pragmatics and reality. It's the statistical truth. That's why we have Obama for 2 terms.
But I also think, I think maybe there was some fraud involved in that too. But I also think that a lot of people, who switched over parties from Democrat to Republican to vote for Donald Trump are going to be those people that perhaps switch back. And I know there are people who are Democrats who are switching over and will stay. So I'm not entirely sold on that concept. I understand what you're saying, and I understand the concern. And in the past, honestly, Carl, I would agree with you in the past. I've always been there in the past and always agree with that. At this point, I don't know. And I can honestly tell you I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I respect your opinion. But you asked me to come on to share why I think the way I think, and I just want to reiterate. I want to reiterate my first passion in life is to advance the kingdom of Jesus Christ, regardless of what Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, or the United States does. I will always serve the Lord without compromising the gospel message and the clear doctrinal tenets of our faith. I will not. I'll be that Daniel, Shadrach, and Meshach, and Abednego. I will deliver myself to the lion's den or the flames if necessary. But in the meantime, I'm going to do my best to influence Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar because that's what I've been called to do. We've been raised up for such a time as this. And pragmatically, statistically, logistically, all things being equal the way they are today, in November, we will only have one of 2 choices. I'm going to vote for the one that I think will give us the most breathing room and the most opportunity out of the box to do some influencing, some shaping, and some changing of some minds. That's how I'm going to vote. I'm just pragmatic in that, and we'll see what God does with it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I respect that, and I hope you know that I do, and I also have to say that the people on the other side feel that they're doing exactly the same thing, that they're following God. They will do what God asks them, tells them to do, directs them to do, and they believe that it's the right thing to do. And I want to respect the people that feel like that too, and I know that you respect them. You may disagree with them. And I think it's good because what's happened so far is that there's been a lot of disagreement to the point where people are at each other's throats. And that's not going to do any good for anybody. It's not going to resolve anything, and it's not going to help this country. I want this country to go forward. And I'll have to tell you that when you were mentioning about, are you the type of person that says this, but you work for these people and you'll take money from them? And I'll have to tell you, I am the type of individual, and I've done it many a time, where if I disagreed with somebody, I'd quit my job. And maybe people think that's crazy, but that's who I am. I do stand behind the principles and what I believe in, and I try to do it. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. Am I putting myself up against Donald Trump and saying I'm better than him? No, because we are all sinners. We are all human beings, and we all have our faults. I'm not running for president. He is, and I think that he needs to be scrutinized by everyone. I'm not saying that people shouldn't vote for him. I'm not saying they should. I'm saying they have to do what they feel they are called to do, and that's it. And I'm fine with what anybody decides to do, especially if it's God-driven. Whatever you do, that's between you and God. That's just where I'm at in it.
Right. Okay. Well, no, I understand, and I appreciate you letting me express my thoughts. I want to reiterate my first passion is for advancing the kingdom, regardless of whether we live in Sodom and Gomorrah or Babylon. That's what I will do. Yep. I believe that we've been raised up for this time, and that's my mission in life. In the meantime, I'm trying to preserve and protect the little bit of freedom we have, buy ourselves some breathing room and opportunity to take the gospel to the world and to give our children and grandchildren a little bit of freedom left before we are enslaved by the new world order that so desperately desires to take over. I know where Hillary Clinton stands on all of that. I will not vote for her or Bernie Sanders. So, given the only other choice right now, that's the way it looks.
Yeah, and I like I said, I really appreciate your opinion and having you come on here. I think there are tons of people who agree with you wholeheartedly, and I think that there are just as many on the other side who are saying, I'm not really, some have already decided, that's it, I'm not voting for Trump no matter what you say. And there are others still out there who are, like myself, who are kind of undecided on which way, what we should do. I will tell you again, for me, whatever God, it's going to be whatever God says. It's not, if I want to go vote for Trump and in prayer God says don't do that, I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm not going to vote for Hillary, so I'll go against God. I think in that way, unfortunately, I'm just being honest with, you know, my listeners and God, but I'm hoping by November I will be clear on what I should do. And in the meantime, I hope that Trump becomes more presidential. That I think that will help a lot of people make a decision. But, you know, who knows? And we'll have to see. Tell us really quickly how people can find out more about you.
Thank you. Susan, thank you. You've been very gracious to allow me to express my opinions. My website is carlgallups.com, and from there you can find the church that I pastor, all the books I've written, the articles, my connections to the media, everything right there, plus thousands of videos, biblical teaching, biblical instruction, a lot of good help there, carlgallups.com.
Perfect. Okay, so I really want you to come back when you get that new book out. I know how important that is to give you a voice on that. And again, I really appreciate your time. I respect your opinion. And, you know, I respect the work that you do. So God bless you, and thank you again for coming on.
And may the Lord bless you and keep you too, Susan. Thank you for the work you do for the kingdom's sake. Thank you for giving me and so many other people a voice, and I pray nothing but the best for you.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
You too.
So there you have it. We have differing opinions. I'm not saying I'm for Trump or against Trump, and that's the honest truth. I simply, at this point, do not know. I am not all in like a number of people, and I'm not all out. So I'm sitting there, and I'm clearly, for me, I am waiting for God to direct me on what I should do. As I do with every major decision that I have in my life, I do turn to God. I ask God, and I go into prayer. So this is going to be the same one, and that's not because of Donald Trump. It is because that's what I feel that I should do as a Christian. I would have been doing the same thing if Ted Cruz were in, while I was more for Ted Cruz because of the constitutional issues. When it came down to it, I would be asking God the same thing. So don't think this is just against Donald Trump or whatever. This is just what I do. So I hope you understand that. I hope that you've gotten some of your questions answered today, one way or the other. And again, I hope we can all have an open dialogue and really discuss these issues and not be at each other's throats. I don't think that we get anything done when we are at each other's throats. We're all in this together. We all basically want the same thing, and that's for America to be the America that we once knew and even better. So thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Until next time, take care of yourself. God bless you, and we'll see you then.
Hi, I'm Susan Knowles. Do you often feel that our world is upside down, where fiction has become fact and America seems to be unrecognizable? Then you'll want to read my fiction, Freedom's Fight, A Call to Remember. Go on a journey with Bethany, who longs for the country she once knew, before the regime took over and changed it beyond recognition. Go with her on her quest to return America to its rightful place. Order Freedom's Fight, A Call to Remember at Amazon.com today.